Once a kingdom starts to prosper, others start paying attention, and not all of that attention is friendly. Welcome back to GM's Guide to Running Kingmaker. In this episode, I will break down Chapter 7, Blood for Blood, where your heroes must defend their growing kingdom from a surprise attack, navigate the treacherous politics of Fort Drevlev, and face off against a legendary warlord who claims to be the reincarnation of an ancient barbarian king. If you're enjoying the series, be sure to like the video, and if you want to follow along chapter by chapter, subscribe and check out the playlist, and leave me a comment telling me about your campaign. Have your players started building armies yet? How are they handling the kingdom's expansion into new territory? Before we get into the video, I need to make a quick correction. After recording, I put on my editor hat and realized halfway through editing that I've been saying Drevlev. Well, it's actually Drelev. I didn't want to re-record the whole thing and delay the release of this video any longer, so consider this the official patch notes. In Chapter 7, Blood for Blood, the kingdom becomes directly entangled in conflicts of the Western Stolen Lands. To understand how things reach this point, let's go over the region's recent history. More than 40 years ago, a cult known as the Sisters of the Bloodshot Eye attempted to create a living reincarnation of an ancient barbarian warlord named Armag. When prophecy failed them, they intervened directly, abducting a young tiger lord and raising him to believe he carried Armag's spirit. Over time, this pawn became Armag the Twiceborn and rose to lead the tiger lords through violence, manipulation, and religious fanaticism. Baron Hannes Drevlev established Fort Drevlev along Lake Hooktongue and expanded south into Tiger Lord territory, looting sacred tombs and attempting to force an alliance. The resulting conflict ended without a decisive victory, leaving Armag weakened and searching for leverage. That leverage came from Pitags. King Irovetti, watching the growing power of neighboring kingdoms, brokered an alliance with Armag and turned Fort Drevlev into a bargaining chip. Faced with overwhelming force, Drevlev surrendered his fort, offered hostages from his own people, and pledged loyalty to Pitags. Since then, Fort Drevlev has existed under occupation, ruled by fear, mercenaries, and martial law. Armag searches his ancestral tombs for relics to legitimize his rule, including Ovinerbane, the legendary sword blessed by Gorm. If he succeeds, he'll emerge powerful enough to raise an army and reshape the River Kingdoms. Meanwhile, jealous of the hero's growing kingdom, Hannes Drevlev launches an attack to expand his influence in the Stolen Lands, setting Chapter 7 in motion. Chapter 7 is broken down into 3 parts. In Part 1, Trouble for Tatzleford, the heroes receive an urgent request for aid as the town prepares for an incoming attack. This part introduces the warfare subsystem and centers on defending Tatzleford. In Part 2, Fort Drevlev, the party infiltrates Drevlev's stronghold to confront the Baron, now aligned with Pitags and the Tiger Lords. This section centers on infiltration and freeing the town through the liberation system. And in Part 3, the Twiceborn Warlord, the party tracks Armag to his ancestral tomb to stop him from claiming relics tied to his legend. This section is a dungeon crawl that culminates in a confrontation with Armag and the forces backing his claim. After the events of Chapter 6, and before the events of Chapter 7 kick off, the heroes should have time to grow their kingdom to catch up to their current level, as the kingdom likely did not grow during the events of Chapter 6. Per the Kingdom in the Background sidebar on page 289, during Chapter 7, the citizens put their fears and hesitancy from the Season of Bloom in Chapter 6 behind them, and the kingdom enters a period of growth. The kingdom should be allowed to expand into Zones 5 through 9, and maybe even starting in Zone 10, Hooktongue Slaw. If the kingdom accepted the request of Varnhold to join their kingdom, they annexed Varnhold as if they had achieved a critical success on a Pledge of Fealty activity. Details on the resources the kingdom gains by adding Varnhold are detailed on page 90 in Chapter 2. Mechanically, this splits the kingdom, making Varnhold a secondary territory with a -4 circumstance penalty to checks. That said, the adventure clarifies that region activities in hexes adjacent to Varnhold improve by 1 degree of success, reflecting how motivated the locals are to recover. I'd recommend waiving the secondary territory penalty for a few kingdom turns, but make it clear that it's temporary. The citizens are motivated right now, and you might even justify a short-term boon from Restov or House Eldori for rescuing Varnhold. That support won't last indefinitely, though. Bringing Varnhold fully into the kingdom should remain a priority before it starts becoming a hindrance. During this stretch, keep an eye on the quests that may become available. Here are some that you may want to have prepped. I will also link a spreadsheet that I created to help track quests in the video description below. As the kingdom grows and the heroes complete more quests, rumors will begin to spread that Pitax is growing uneasy about their expansion. Once the kingdom is leveled up and the quests have been wrapped up, we can kick off the events of Chapter 7. Part 1 kicks off as a messenger bird delivers a message from Tatzleford's mayor, Loy Resbin. The message states that word has come to Tatzleford indicating an army from Drevlev is marching towards the town and the kingdom. Alternatively, should the kingdom already have expanded west past Tatzleford, the Watching the Borders sidebar on page 291 outlines that the heroes may learn through rumors that a large band of mercenaries is on the move in their land. As written, this section of the adventure assumes Tatzleford is still a freehold and not formally part of the hero's kingdom. On page 290, the adventure notes that if your campaign is developed differently, you can adjust the town to match your version of events, and you can also relocate this attack to another freehold settlement instead. Tatzleford has a small wooden fort at its center, but it has outgrown those defenses, and new walls are under construction, but not yet finished. When the heroes arrive, they are met by Captain Corey Lowry, commander of the guard, who offers to escort them to the lodge where they can meet Mayor Resbin and speak with the woman who has brought them news of impending war. While on the way to the lodge, he can also give the heroes a tour of the town. Resbin is a likable, down-to-earth man, and he does his best to greet the heroes with respect. He introduces them to Kisandra Numesi. Full details on what she can tell the heroes starts on page 293. In short, Kisandra is the daughter of a knight and aristocrat stationed at Fort Drevlev. She tells them that Hannes Drevlev has surrendered to the Tiger Lords and to the Lord of Pitax to prevent them from overtaking his kingdom, and he now sees attacking the hero's kingdom as a way to prove his worth. An army consisting of 100 Drevlev troops armed with longswords, 50 Tiger Lords armed with axes, and a dozen immense trolls are marching towards Tatzleford. The army is being commanded by one of Drevlev's men, a man named Eamon Trask. The forces are somewhat disorganized and sloppy, and Eamon will likely just have them charge the village while he hangs back with guards to observe. The town has managed to round up 2 relatively small armies, one of the town guard and one of hunters from the surrounding Gnarl Marches. These armies are detailed on page 295. The town has an advantageous position, some fortifications, and the river will act as an obstacle. Kisandra will suggest that while the town guard and hunter armies engage the invaders, the heroes should circle around and strike at Eamon Trask directly. He is likely to remain behind the lines with minimal protection. If the heroes can defeat him, the attacking forces will lose cohesion and may flee or become much easier to defeat. After the meeting, the heroes can take part in the Assessing Tatzleford's Defenses activity on page 295. They spend about an hour evaluating the town's defenses and make a defense check to identify additional improvements that can be made. Based on the result, each hero can choose one defensive action from the options unlocked. The specific actions available are determined by the GM. The adventure also notes that if the players come up with one of the listed defensive ideas on their own, or something close enough, you can grant access to that activity regardless of the check result. Those defensive options are detailed starting on page 296, and they can significantly affect the warfare encounter that follows. I will leave a link in the video description to other videos that cover warfare encounter rules. I will also leave links for skirmishes and troop encounter rules, as these could be alternative methods to running the attack encounter. If you decide to run one of these alternative encounter types, then I would advise to carefully consider how the defensive actions will impact those encounters. Additionally, the sidebar, a quick play alternative, also on page 296, advises that if you do not wish to play out the warfare encounter, you can have the heroes roll a single warfare check to determine if the town is successful in defeating the enemy. Lastly, the intercepting the enemy sidebar on page 295 explains how to handle it if the heroes decide to take the fight to Aemon Trask before he reaches Tatzleford. Mayor Resbin cautions against this approach, pointing out that without the town's defenses, the town guard and hunter armies will be at a severe disadvantage in the wilderness and could be overwhelmed by the attackers' superior numbers. If the heroes pursue this plan, have them make an exploration or wilderness check. On a critical success, they gain a +4 circumstance bonus on initiative in the encounter. But on a failure, they fail to locate the army in time and return to Tatzleford to find it already seized by Trask's forces, giving him the defensive advantages of the town. This part of the adventure assumes the hero's kingdom has not yet built standing armies. The encounter is intentionally scripted to be difficult but not impossible, with the outcome depending on whether the PCs can neutralize the enemy leadership during the battle. If the heroes arrive with an army, those forces can immediately join the fight, but there may not be time to deploy additional armies from elsewhere in the kingdom. At the GM's discretion, the heroes can attempt a deploy army kingdom activity. On a success, any army within 2 hexes will arrive in time for the battle, and on a critical success, an army within 4 hexes can arrive. Any army that arrives this way increases its weary condition by 1 due to the forced march. Losing the warfare encounter does not immediately mean defeat. Once the battle and confrontation with Aemon Trask is over, consult the After the Battle section starting on page 298 to determine the final outcome. This also includes determining victory or determining defeat warfare activities on page 578. Rolling a warfare check to determine the outcome on the kingdom. If Aemon Trask was defeated or captured, the result of this check is improved by 1 degree. Otherwise, it is worsened by 1 degree. Based on the victory and defeat conditions on page 298, as long as the heroes defeat, capture, or drive off Aemon Trask, the worst outcome is that the structures in the town of Tatzleford are destroyed and the kingdom gains ruin and unrest. If Aemon escapes, he will return to Fort Drevlev and can be encountered later in the adventure. If the heroes capture him alive, his attitude is hostile, and he remains silent unless made friendly through diplomacy to make an impression, intimidation, or with magic. At which point he will reveal what he knows about Fort Drevlev and the Baron as detailed on page 301. If made helpful, he agrees to accompany the heroes to Fort Drevlev to aid them in dealing with the Baron. After the battle, Kisandra thanks the heroes for defending Tatzleford and appeals to their reputation as problem solvers. She asks them to rescue her father from the dungeon beneath Drevlev Keep and to save her sister who has been taken by the Tiger Lords. Details of this quest are in the quest block Kissandra's Plea on page 299. These quests will lead into parts 2 and 3. Kisandra describes Hannes Drevlev as a craven bully whose rule will cost countless lives if left unchecked, and urges the heroes to force him from power and liberate his domain. Kisandra has little wealth to offer, but she pledges her family's loyalty if the heroes intervene. She also points out that freeing Fort Drevlev would almost certainly earn the allegiance of its citizens. Despite her concern for her family, Kisandra refuses to return to Fort Drevlev while Hannah still rules. Instead, she provides the heroes with a hand-drawn map of the town and the name of a potential ally, Satinder Morn, the owner of the local gaming hall and brothel. As proof of trust, Kisandra gives the heroes a jade ring and explains that presenting it to Satinder, threaded with a long-stemmed flower, will mark them as friends and grant them safe contact inside the city. If the heroes successfully defend Tatzleford, or whatever freehold settlement you decide to put it in, before it has formally joined their kingdom, Mayor Loy Resbin pledges the settlement to them in gratitude. Treat this as a critical success on a pledge of fealty. As part of that pledge, Resbin sends a gift of lumber and supplies. The kingdom gains 5 lumber commodities, and at the start of the next kingdom turn, the kingdom gains 2 bonus resource point dice. The details of the settlement is listed on page 291. And that wraps up part 1 of chapter 7. In future videos, I will cover part 2, where the heroes venture to Fort Drevlev to liberate the city and confront Hannes Drevlev, and part 3, where they track down and confront Armag and his Tiger Lords. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and leave me a comment and let me know about your campaign or any questions you may have about Kingmaker.